Chapter 5 Elasticity and Its Applications. In this chapter, we seek answers to these questions. What is elasticity? What kinds of issues can elasticity help us understand? What is the price elasticity of demand? How is it related to the demand curve? How is it related to revenue and expenditure? What is the price elasticity of supply? How is it related to the supply curve? What are the income and gross price elasticities of demand? Let's look at a scenario here. You maintain the social media accounts for local businesses. You charge $2,000 per business and currently maintain the social media accounts for 12 businesses per year. Your costs are rising, including the opportunity cost of your time. You consider raising the price to $2,500. The law of demand says that if you raise your price, you will not have as many accounts to maintain. Well, how many fewer accounts? How much will your revenue fall, or might it increase? Elasticity of demand. Elasticity is the measure of the responsiveness of quantity demanded or quantity supplied to a change in one of its determinants. Price elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded of a good responds to a change in the price of that good. Loosely speaking, it measures the price sensitivity of buyers' demand. Let us look at the graph of a demand curve. If price rises by 10% and quantity falls by 10%, the price elasticity of demand is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. And in this case, quantity demanded fall by 15%. 15% is the numerator. And price rises by 10%, and you divide 15 by 10, you get 1.5. Along a demand curve, price and quantity move in opposite directions, which would make price elasticity a negative number. We will drop the minus sign and report all price elasticities as positive numbers, in other words, absolute values. Calculating percentage changes. Standard method of calculating percentage change is the end value minus the start value divided by the start value, multiply that by 100. And going from A to B, the percentage change in price is 25%, price changing from 2,000 to 2,500. And percentage change in quantity going from 12 to 8 is minus 33%. So price elasticity is 33 divided by 25, and that is 1.33. Going from B to A, that means price is falling from 2,500 to 2,000, and quantity increasing from 8 to 12. Percentage change in price is negative 20%. Percentage change in quantity is 50%. Therefore, price elasticity is 50 divided by 20, or 2.5. The problem with this method, we get two different values over the same range. So, what we do? We use the midpoint method. It's an improvement. The midpoint is the number halfway between the start and end values, the average of those values. So percentage change is equal to end value minus start value divided by the midpoint times 100. Or price elasticity of demand is equal to into bracket Q2 minus Q1 divided by into bracket Q2 plus Q1 divided by 2 all over into bracket P2 minus P1 divided by into bracket P2 plus P1 divided by 2. Using the midpoint method of computing percentage changes, percentage change in price is start value 2,500 minus, end value 2,500 minus start value 2,000 divided by the average of those two numbers. Multiply by 100, you get 22.2%. A change in quantity is the end value, which is 12, minus the start value, which is 8, divided by the average of these two numbers, which is 10. You multiply by 100 is equal to 40%. Price elasticity, therefore, is 40% divided by 22.2% is equal to 1.8. Active Learning 1. Calculate an elasticity. Use the following information to calculate the price elasticity of demand for iPhones. Price is 400 and changes to 600. Quantity is 10,600 and changes to 8,400. Number A. Use the midpoint method to calculate percentage change in price. Number B. Use the midpoint method to calculate percentage change in quantity. Number C. Calculate the price elasticity of demand. Use the midpoint method to calculate percentage change. A. Percentage change in price is 600 minus 400 divided by 500 times 100, that is 40%. B. Percentage change in quantity. 10,600 minus 8,400 divided by 9,500 times 100 is equal to 23.16%. Number C. Calculate price elasticity of demand, which is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price, and that is 23.16% divided by 40% is 0.58%. Determinants of price elasticity of demand. We look at a series of examples comparing two common goods. In each example, suppose prices of both goods rise by 20%. Which good has the highest price elasticity of demand and why? What lesson we learn about the determinants of price elasticity of demand? Example 1, Cheerios versus airfare. Both prices of both of these goods rise by 20%. For which good does quantity demanded drop the most and why? Cheerios has many close substitutes, so buyers can easily switch if the price rises. Traveling by airplane has no close substitute, so a price increase would not affect demand very much. Therefore, the price elasticity is higher when close substitutes are available. Prices of both of these goods rise by 20%. For which good does quantity demanded drop the most? And that is Mountain Dew versus soda pop. For a narrowly defined good like Mountain Dew, there are many substitutes. There are fewer substitutes available for broadly defined goods like soda pop. Therefore, price elasticity is higher for narrowly defined goods than for broadly defined ones. Example 3, Insulin versus Rolex watches. Prices of both of these goods rise by 20%. For which good does quantity demanded drop the most, and why? Insulin is a necessity to diabetics. A rise in price would cause little or no decrease in quantity demanded. Rolex watch is a luxury. If the price rises, some people will forgo it. Therefore, price elasticity is higher for luxuries than for necessities. Example 4, gasoline in the short run versus in the long run. The price of gasoline rises 20%. Does quantity demanded drop more in the short run or the long run, and why? There is not much people can do in the short run other than ride the bus or carpool. In the long run, people can buy smaller cars or live closer to work. Therefore, price elasticity is higher in the long run. Variety of demand curves. Demand is elastic when price elasticity of demand is greater than 1. Demand is inelastic when price elasticity of demand is less than 1. Demand has unit elasticity when price elasticity of demand is equal to 1. Demand is perfectly inelastic. Price elasticity of demand is 0. Demand curve is vertical. Demand is perfectly elastic when price elasticity of demand is infinity. Then demand curve is horizontal. The flatter the demand curve, the greater the price elasticity of demand. So price elasticity of demand, of course, equal to percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Let's look at the graph with a vertical demand curve. If price changes from P1 to P2, price falls by 10%, and quantity changes by 0%, elasticity coefficient is 0 because demand curve is vertical. That means consumer price sensitivity is none, and that is why elasticity is 0. What about inelastic demand? Price elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. If price falls by 10% and quantity rises by less than 10%, this increase is less than this 10%, then percentage change in quantity is larger than the percentage change in no, percentage change in quantity is smaller than the percentage change in price. That means elasticity is less than 1. So demand curve is relatively steep. Consumers' price sensitivity is relatively low, and therefore elasticity is less than 1. Unit elastic. Unit elastic is when the percentage change in price, in this case, percentage decrease, 10% decrease in price, divided by 10 percentage increase in quantity, that is 10% divided by 10%, will give you 1. Demand curve is that intermediate slope. Consumer price sensitivity is intermediate, and price elasticity is 1. What about elastic demand? A fairly flat demand curve. And when price declines by 10%, quantity changes by larger than or more than 10%, then the elasticity coefficient is a number greater than 1. And so demand curve is relatively flat. Consumers' price sensitivity is relatively high, and the elasticity coefficient is greater than 1. Perfectly elastic demand is when there's a horizontal demand curve. and that means there's no percentage change in price and percentage change in quantity, any change in quantity, and that is infinite. The demand curve is horizontal, consumers' price sensitivity is extreme, and we say elasticity is infinity. A few elasticities from the real world. Eggs are fairly inelastic. Healthcare, fairly inelastic demand. Cigarettes, rice, housing, fairly inelastic. Beef, that is greater than 1, that is elastic. Peanut butter, restaurant meals, Cheerios, Mountain Dew become more and more elastic as you go down there. Elasticity along a linear demand curve. The slope of a linear demand curve is constant, but its elasticity is not. So, over this range between 30 and 20, elasticity is 200% divided by 40%, and that is 5. That means elastic. Over this mid-range, percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price is 67% divided by 67%, and that is 1. And over this lower range, percentage change in quantity is 40. Percentage change in price is 200%, and therefore elasticity is 0.2, and that means inelastic. Our scenario, total revenue. Continuing our scenario, if you raise your price from 2,000 to 2,500, would your revenue rise or fall? Total revenue is price times quantity. A price increase has two effects on revenue. Higher revenue because of the higher price. Lower revenue, you maintain fewer accounts, lower quantity. Which of these two effects is bigger? It depends on the price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand is 1.8. If price is equal to 2,000, quantity is equal to 12, and total revenue is 2,400. And if price is 2,500, quantity is 8, and total revenue is 20,000, you have lost revenue in this blue rectangle here. The green area is increased revenue due to higher price. When demand is elastic, a price increase causes revenue to fall. What about inelastic demand? If price elasticity is less than 1, in this case 0.82, and if price is 2,000, quantity is 12, total revenue is 24,000, and if price goes to 2,500 and quantity goes to 10, total revenue is 25,000. The green rectangle is the lost revenue. The blue rectangle is lost revenue due to lower quantity. And the green rectangle is increased revenue due to higher price. When demand is inelastic, a price increase causes revenue to rise. Price elasticity and total revenue. For a price increase, if demand is elastic, elasticity coefficient is greater than 1, That means percentage change in quantity is greater than percentage change in price. Total revenue decreases. The fall in revenue from lower quantity is greater than increase in revenue from higher price. For a price increase, if demand is inelastic, elasticity coefficient is less than 1, percentage change in quantity is less than percentage change in price. Total revenue increases. The fall in revenue from lower quantity is less than the increase in revenue from higher price. Active Learning 2. Elasticity and total revenue. A. Pharmacies raise the price of insulin by 10%. Does total expenditure on insulin rise or fall? Number B. As a result of fare war, the price of luxury cruise falls 20%. Does luxury cruise companies' total revenue rise or fall? Number A. Answer. Pharmacies raise the price of insulin by 10%. Does total revenue on insulin rises or falls? Expenditure is total revenue, which is price times quantity. Since demand for insulin is inelastic, quantity will fall less than 10%, so expenditure will rise. As a result of a fare war, the price of luxury cruises falls 20%. Does luxury cruise companies' total revenue rises or falls? Revenue is P times Q. The fall in P reduces revenue, but Q increases, which increases revenue. Which effect is bigger? Since demand is elastic, quantity will increase more than 20%, so revenue will rise. Does drug interdiction increase or decrease drug-related crimes? Increase the number of federal agents devoted to the war on drugs. Does illegal drugs supply curve shifts to the left? Higher price and lower quantity is the result. Amount of drug-related crimes. We have inelastic demand for drugs, higher drug prices, which means higher total revenue, increased drug-related crimes. Policy 1, Interdiction. Initial value of drug-related crimes is at the equilibrium P1Q1. Interdiction reduces the supply of drugs, which means the supply curve shifts to the left. Demand for drugs is inelastic, so price rises proportionally more than quantity falls. Result an increase in total spending on drugs and in drug-related crime. 2. Policy of drug education. Reduce demand for illegal drugs, shifts the demand curve to the left, lower quantity, lower price, reduce drug-related crime. Let's look at the graph. Initial value of drug-related crime. Education reduces demand for drugs, shifts the demand to the left. Price and quantity falls. New value of drug-related crime. The result, a decrease in total spending on drugs and in drug-related crimes. Income elasticity of demand. Income elasticity of demand is how much the quantity demanded of a good responds to a change in consumers' income. Percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in income. A normal good income elasticity is positive or greater than zero. An inferior good income elasticity is less than zero or negative. Gross price elasticity of demand. How much the quantity demanded of one good responds to a change in the price of another good. Percentage change in quantity demanded of the first good divided by the percentage change in the price of the second good. If the two goods are substitutes, gross price elasticity is positive or greater than zero. If the two products are complements, gross price elasticity will be negative or less than zero. Price elasticity of supply. Price elasticity of supply is how much the quantity supplied of a good responds to a change in the price of that good. Percentage change in quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in price. Loosely speaking, it measures sellers' price sensitivity. Calculating price elasticity of supply. There's a supply curve, and if price rises by 8% and quantity supplied rises by 16%, percentage price elasticity of supply is percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price, and that is 16% divided by 8%, which is 2. Again, we use the midpoint method to compute the percentage changes. The variety of supply curves. Supply is unit elastic when price elasticity of supply is equal to 1. Supply is elastic when price elasticity of supply is greater than 1. Supply is inelastic when price elasticity of supply is less than 1. Supply is perfectly inelastic when the price elasticity of supply is 0 and supply curve is vertical. Supply is perfectly elastic when the price elasticity of supply is infinity and the supply curve is horizontal. The flatter the supply curve, the greater the price elasticity of supply. And so look at the vertical supply curve. If price rises by 10% and quantity changes by 0, the price elasticity of supply is 0. Okay? When supply is inelastic, a fairly steep supply curve, a 10% increase in price will lead to quantity rising by less than 10%, and that means the result is elasticity coefficient that is less than 1, so supply is relatively inelastic. Unit elasticity. Unit elastic supply. When the price increases by 10% and quantity supplied increases by 10%, elasticity coefficient is equal to 1. That is the intermediate slope. And seller's price sensitivity is intermediate and elasticity coefficient is 1. Elastic supply, or a fairly flat supply curve. A 10% increase in price leads to quantity supplied rising by greater than 10%, and that number is greater than 1. So supply curve is relatively flat Seller's price sensitivity is relatively high and elasticity is greater than 1. Perfectly elastic supply curve is a horizontal supply curve with no change in price, and any change in quantity leads to infinity. The supply curve is horizontal, seller's price sensitivity is extreme, and elasticity coefficient is infinite. Determinants of supply elasticity. Greater price elasticity of supply, the more easily sellers can change the quantity they produce. Price elasticity of supply is greater in the long run than in the short run. In the long run, farms can build new factories or new farms may be able to enter the market. Active learning 3. Elasticity and changes in equilibrium. Assume the supply of parking spots is inelastic and the supply of wheat is elastic. Suppose population growth causes demand for both goods to double at each price as quantity demanded doubles. For which product will price change the most? For which product will quantity change the most? Number A, draw a graph with the new equilibrium in the market for parking. And number B, draw a graph with the new equilibrium in the market for wheat. When supply is inelastic, a fairly steep supply curve, an increase in demand has a bigger impact on price than on quantity. So when demand shifts to the right, price changes from P1 to P2, a much larger change than a change in quantity. What about wheat? Wheat has a fairly flat supply curve or elastic supply curve. When demand increases, when supply is elastic, like a flat supply curve, an increase in demand or a right shift of the demand curve has a bigger impact on quantity than on price. As you can see, a small change in price from P1 to P2 has a larger change in quantity proportionally from Q1 to Q2. How the price elasticity of supply can vary. Elasticity is large, greater than 1, when price changes from 3 to 4 and quantity changes from 100 to 200. Elasticity is small or less than 1 when price changes from 12 to 15 and quantity changes from 500 to 525. Supply often becomes less elastic as quantity rises due to capacity limits. More applications. Number 1, can good news for farming be bad news for farmers? New hybrid of wheat, 20% increased production per acre. Supply curve shifts to the right. Higher quantity means lower price. Demand is inelastic. Total revenue therefore falls. Paradox of public policy induce farmers not to plant crops. Think about that. An increase in supply in the market for wheat. When demand is inelastic, okay, demand is inelastic, an increase in supply leads to a large fall in price. Price goes from 3 to 2. and a proportionately smaller increase in quantity sold. As a result, revenue falls from 300 to 220. Why did OPEC fail to keep the price of oil high? Increase in price 1973 to 74 and 1971 to 1981. In the short run, supply and demand are inelastic. Decrease in supply means a large increase in price. In the long run, supply and demand are elastic. Decrease in supply leads to a small increase in price. A reduction in supply in the world market for oil. The oil market in the short run, when supply and demand are inelastic, a shift in supply, in this case a left shift in the supply, leads to a large increase in price. Price goes from P1 to P2. Number B, the oil market in the long run, when both demand and supply are elastic. In the long run, when supply and demand are elastic, a shift in supply, in this case a left shift in supply, leads to a small increase in price. Think, pair, share. In order to reduce teen smoking, the government places a $2 per pack tax on cigarettes. After 1 month, the quantity demanded of cigarettes has been reduced only slightly. Discuss the following. What conclusion can you draw about the 1 month demand for cigarettes? Number B. Caleb suggests that the cigarette industry should get together and raise the price of cigarettes further to increase total revenue. Number C. Keisha suggests that only your firm should raise the price of your cigarettes to increase total revenue. Think about that. Summary. Chapter in a nutshell. The price elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded responds to changes in the price. The price elasticity of demand is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. And if elasticity is less than 1, demand is inelastic. Quantity demanded moves proportionately less than the price. If elasticity is greater than 1, that means elastic demand, quantity demanded moves proportionately more than the price. Demand tends to be more elastic if close substitutes are available. The good is a luxury rather than a necessity. The market is narrowly defined. If buyers have substantial time to react to a price change. Total revenue, which is price times quantity, total amount paid for a good moves in the same direction as price if demand is elastic, moves in opposite direction as price if demand is elastic. Income elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded responds to changes in consumers' income. The cross price elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded of one good responds to changes in the price of another good. The tools of supply and demand can be applied to many different kinds of markets. This chapter uses them to analyze the market for wheat, the market for oil, and the market for illegal drugs. The price elasticity of supply measures how much the quantity supplied responds to changes in the price. The price elasticity of supply is the percentage change in quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in price. If elasticity is less than 1, supply is inelastic. That means quantity supplied moves proportionately less than the price. If elasticity is greater than 1, that means elastic supply. Quantity supplied moves proportionately more than the price. And it also depends on the time horizon under consideration. In most markets, supply is more elastic in the long run than in the short